Hello, everyone, and welcome. For those that are returning, welcome back. You may have noticed I moved, which explains my absence, and it's not just because I'm lazy and forget to find time to work on these. Today, I want to do something a little different and talk about an analog horror series known as the Macabre Experiment by Stuffy Studios, which combines two of my favorite things, creepypastas and analog horror, in a pretty interesting way. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go over the series as it is right now, dissect it a bit, and then in the end, I'll give what I think is a loose timeline. So if that sounds interesting to you, then by all means stick around and let's talk about it. With that all out of the way, let's just go ahead and start talking about the first thing. The first episode of the series is called Failed Experiment 22, and it begins with a man named Wyatt being interviewed by an unknown individual about a camping trip he and his friends took in hope of fixing some strife within the group. Wyatt explains that one of his friends couldn't make it, and that may come back later, we'll see. Wyatt goes on to explain some weird things that happened at the camp, including, he came across a dog leash and, there was blood around it, dogs barking, and how he was the only one that could hear it. Once home, Wyatt gets an email from an anonymous source with a link to the dreaded image of Smile Dog. Wyatt goes on to explain how a voice then just kind of in his head told him to send the image to his friends, and he kind of bears the responsibility and the guilt for their murders before the interviewer tells him, hey, you know what, that's enough for today, man. We made some good progress. The video then cuts to a distorted image of a desktop with multiple pop-ups saying, spread the image, before we see, Smile Dog. We then get a cut to an old Looney Tunes seen through the eye of a keyhole of a dog going to bed before it cuts again to the dog still asleep, but now in full view and distorted for a few seconds. The dog then wakes up later on and hears a banging and finds out it's the sink dripping, so he goes to turn it off and heads back to bed. The banging continues at a rhythmic pace before the dog then removes the faucet altogether, and it's kind of funny. I like old Looney Tunes, so I got a good little chuckle out of this, but this is actually a funny little bit. Dog goes back to bed, and we get a shot of him laying there with several cuts to black and beeping between shots, and then this happens. And yes, it scared me the first time. That was our first look at the black creature that the series will kind of follow. And I'm pretty sure its power is to generate media. And again, it kind of freaked me out this first time. It was very well good. Very, very well placed scare. The dog takes out a light bulb and it still turns itself on. Then we get a field of sunflowers with creepy distorted voices reading the text on screen before everything gets distorted, and Smile Dog is there telling us to spread the image. Now, I think the cartoon is supposed to be Wyatt's struggle to sleep the night. For, the whole sequence is also supposed to be a foreshadow into what this creature is capable of, that being haunting people and media manipulation, which we'll see later on. As for the field of flowers, I think this is supposed to be Wyatt's dream. That night, and how Smile Dog and the creature are able to get inside his head once he's actually able to get to sleep. We then see a drawing of a woman named Sadie on her stomach, and it looks like she has blood all around her, and there is some text that pops up saying sweet dreams. We're then told the interviewer, just out of pure curiosity, couldn't hold himself, he had to take a look at the image. and was found dead 2 days later. And the video ends, but not before we get a link to an 11-second video called Your Choice. Now, Your Choice is just a video of the picture of the husky originally attached to the Smile Dog creepypasta, constantly saying, "Spread the word." And I think this is a really strong start to the series, because it poses questions of, like, who's this guy? Why is he interviewing? Is he just a detective? Is he part of another organization? Who sent Wyatt the video? What's going on here? And we're going to get some questions to this as of right now. The next video in the series is Failed Experiment 16, The Mouse. We get some text telling us this video is not for the faint of heart and it should be deleted immediately. We then hear a one-way phone call of a woman named Diana complaining to who I assume is her husband that her coworker isn't doing his work, and that their deadline is this Sunday for the show they're making, before cutting to an old distorted cartoon of Mickey Mouse out in the wind. Mickey is thrown into a house and locked in before we see some spooky stuff happen here. Then we see that the face is in the background, so this is clearly some more cursed media. A hooded figure then starts to approach Mickey, and we see truly some terrifying stuff. It then cuts to a phone call between Diana and a man named Curtis, with Curtis telling Diana he has everything under control and Diana needs to leave. I assume Curtis is her coworker, maybe not the guy that's been procrastinating, but a coworker, with Diana's voice sounding slightly muffled and even distraught, as if she's been crying or upset over something. Then see a note from Diana's husband saying, I know you're excited for the show to premiere, sweetie. I'll be home right after and you can tell me how it was. I love you. With a voice saying words I can't quite make out. Before we see Mickey Mouse's face and multiple eyes and the words of "your child is dead" above him, with the voice just repeating the words on screen, just repeating the word "dead." For a brief second, the message, "Look at the screen, AN," appears before Mickey's face distorts and we see a skull. Mickey then begins his walking animation we normally associate with the original creepypasta's footage, through a distorted background before the background just turns pure black. Before cutting to him with a certain item that can unalive him to his head in a bank. We then get a call from Rowan Wither, the son of Diana's co-worker, recorded for the investigation, in which most of the audio is garbled, with the only words I can make out being, "Oh my god, I think he's dead," and "I think he shot himself," leading to the assumption that this is Rowan's call to 911 after his father unalived himself, presumably after seeing this original cartoon. Also, this picture of Rowan is really creepy. I kind of like it. I want to frame it like in my living room or something. There's an old Disneyland ad with some classic Mickey footage, spliced in before we see someone, possibly Curtis, laying on the ground, eyes blacked out, and some splatter besides them. Plus a little more classic Mickey footage with some garbled audio. I mean, who doesn't love some Mickey Mouse? Before we see Mickey just kind of stare at us with, eyes within his eyes, and what sounds like howling on the top of the classic creepypasta animation. Then another image of a person who I think might be Diana, laying face down, blacked out with some blood splatter on their clothes. And the video ends with a note saying, quote, "Guess what, Diana? I got the footage we needed. Took some work, it's rare, Bought it off some shady company. They recreated the cartoon on their own, they said. Pretty impressive, honestly. It looks legit to me. Just don't let them know where I got it, alright? He's gonna be so glad we managed to get this. Silas C." Now, I think the story of this one is a lot more obvious than Smile Dog, mostly thanks to the note at the end. Diana and Curtis are animators at Disney, with Curtis being a little lazy. I think the footage throughout the video is what Silas got from the shady company, which lines up when you compare it to the dog cartoon from Smile Dog. And the figure that appears in both animations with the bodies we see for brief seconds being Curtis and Diana, after pre-screening the cartoon with Silas's footage. So as of right now, all we know is that these stories are connected by this figure, and there is an unknown entity that has the power to release evil on people through JPEGs and animation. Okay, so before we start this next one, I feel like it should be noted, I have never played Majora's Mask and don't know anything about it. So don't get too mad at me for getting things wrong, and I think that alone should tell you what this next one is. Because Failed Experiment 8 is titled Ben, and it starts with a man named Oliver talking about how he bought a copy of a game from his childhood at a yard sale, and he just really wanted to beat it because he was never able to do it as a kid. But then something that looks like Link starts to follow him as he loads the game. Noticing this strange statue following him, Oliver thinks it's a glitch and does a natural thing of, he says he looks into it and no one else had ever reported it, so it's just a rare glitch that he was the first person to find. He just kind of carries on in the game, like as much as he doesn't want to, he kind of like feels the need to, as if he was in a trance. We then see footage of the game Majora's Mask as Link is followed around by a teleporting statue throughout a level before it's the dawn of the new day and we see Link in the boss fight arena. And I just want to say real quick, you're going to see this throughout the rest of the series, but the use of like footage made for these creepypastas is blended in really well, and I really like how it's edited in there. So as Link is in the final boss fight arena, he shoots a few arrows at the boss, who I'm pretty sure is Majora, with nothing happening before being lit on fire and the fight resetting. We see the fight play out the same way 2 more times, with the footage getting more and more distorted each time Link is set on fire. It goes back to some gameplay before we see a child and the text, "Please help me." We then get an in-game message of "You can't run." After seeing the mask salesman, the game just kind of resets, and the text that says "Father" and "Why would you do it?" A saved game then pops up titled "Your Turn." Oliver loads it, and we see Link laying on the ground of that same boss fight arena with a creature in the background giggling, getting closer as the game resets again. After the game resets, there is a new save file named Ben available to play on the final day. Oliver loads up the save, and we see that Link is bent to the side and a distorted image of the statue appearing saying, "I've been stuck in a shell. I just want to be free." It then begins to cut between the game with the statue loading in and saying, "I want to rest peacefully without him." And we see this, we're then linked to a video titled mp4.neb. mp4.neb shows us a person walking away from the water with distorted audio. When reversed, the audio says, "I took him to the ride one day, but of course I didn't tell him. He still didn't like the idea. I miss him. I didn't mean to. He attacked me. He was acting up, trying to kill me. I don't understand why. Why would he do that to me?" I think unlike Smile Dog and the Mouse, Ben was never meant to be seen by anyone except for the man that Oliver bought it from. And this man just so happened to work for the company that is making the creature and spreading it to people. And it's possible, it seems to me, like Ben was his son, who years ago loved Majora's Mask, and his father used whatever method the company that makes the cursed media uses to trap Ben in the game, whether it be magical or scientific. And Ben's been suffering with the creepy imagery, the messaging, with messing with the game world and following Oliver as a statue, not being with the intent to scare him, but instead just being the only way he can communicate, begging Oliver to help him. It's actually more tragic than anything else. He's not malicious. He's looking for help. And that's really, really depressing when you actually think about it, and just kind of like, God, like I'm sad now. I'm upset. I don't know, the idea of just being forcibly trapped in something like that is absolutely terrifying. Failed Experiment 5, the killer, begins with the same agency from the mouse telling us the investigation must remain private and that we've been warned. We then get another phone call from Rowan Withers, of all people. You may remember he was the son of one of the people that made the mouse. Rowan is on the phone with someone outside his home who refuses to tell Rowan what's in his hand and instead just kind of tells him to come outside. It cuts to live footage of Rowan holding a gun to the man outside and an infographic made for Rowan saying he's lost everything, including his will to live. We then get to see what looks like someone accessing a computer to see the Macabre attendance check, which this organization that's kind of investigating everything, we see that these are the ones that they have, kind of in custody, I guess. It shows Melissa Stockholm, aka Joyless, Dakota Norman, aka the Abomination, Eyeless Jack, and Hal Gorman, or the Hollowed, are all in containment. We also see that they had Jeff the Killer, but he has escaped containment. Oh yeah, also I completely forgot to mention there's like this organization that's like trying to hunt down the Macabre and kind of like secure and contain them. They're like an SCP type of like group. There's some live footage of what looks like a room before we're given what looks like a training video for this agency that's containing the Macabre that seems to be giving them information on their equipment before entering a contaminated site. Before it seems that the creature from earlier has entered their training video. And it all continues with the video ending telling us that Rowan was arrested for murder, presumably of the individual that was outside of his home. The final episode of the series, as of writing, begins with the agency reporting Candle Cove as a series many remember watching as children with good memories, others not so much, so the agency begins reaching out to get information on the series anonymously online. The first report comes from a woman named Jennifer Winters, who recalls thinking it was creepy how her daughter would come home from school and just sit in front of the TV saying it was a show called Candle Cove, when in reality she was just watching static. A user called RemoteLemur7 recalls that they started watching the show after school when they were around 7, just before it ended, and really enjoyed it aside from the skeleton character that would give them nightmares. Another internet user called Rocky recalls that the skeleton was the villain and named the Skin Taker, and how their sister would scare them by saying he'd take Rocky's skin if they stayed up too late. I really like how all this is an homage to the original story, which, if you've never read the original Candle Cove, it's presented in the way of an online forum of people reminiscing about the show, with the big twist being it was just static all along. I really like how, it's all presented as a thread on 4chan or Reddit, and this kind of keeps with that same tradition. Were then shown some static, and then a member of the agency asking, well, what did he look like? No answer is given. It then cuts to what looks like a report from 2 men who investigated the Macabre facility, presented in the same way as the training video from Failed Experiment 5. Leading me to believe that this video was shown to Samson and the other investigator before doing this investigation. This report shows that a vial had been broken containing a chemical that affects children, making them see hallucinations, causing, so it's a good chance that Candle Cove is just a hallucination of all these children that were exposed to it within the same town. However, these children are not considered to be macabre, as they mostly remain sane. However, the report is garbled before we find out what will happen when the serum takes full effect. Now, I do think it'd be really cool, because if you've ever seen the show Channel Zero, which is, it's kind of like American Horror Story, but each season was based on a creepypasta. The first season is on Candle Cove. I wouldn't put it out the realm to say that it turns them into psycho-little murderers like in that show, but who knows? I mean, it could just turn them into actual creepypasta monsters, like, I don't know, Laughing Jack, creepypasta monsters. Yes, I can't remember any off the top of my head. The episode continues as we see Pirate Percy enter Bravery Cave, and I just want to note that this is also footage from Channel Zero here, and it's pretty well integrated, but Percy is attacked by the Skin Taker before we lose the signal, and we are shown this. video ends with a link to an unlisted video titled cartridge-discovery.mp4. And this is a teaser for the next entry in the series, where we find out that while in the facility, Samson and Hannah, the two that had gone to investigate it, found a game cartridge lost by the agency with Sonic 2 on it, hinting that the next entry will be Sonic.exe. While this is an anthology series, I do think there is an overarching story that I have kind of pieced together. Now, there are two major players in this. You have the agency itself, who are investigating the Macabres, and like I said, they're similar to like the SCP Foundation. And they are regularly in the series, they're following leads and they're trying to contain the creatures. They're not the best group, I'll get to that in a minute, but they're also the good guys in this, if you want to call them that. The black creature that has been popping up in all of this media, it's in the animations, games, and which is why we're seeing the reports on things like Smile Dog, Suicide Mouse, Ben Drowned, and Candle Cove, and soon Sonic.exe, I think. They may be, so I think what the entire series is them investigating the creature. And they're just trying to pinpoint its origin for containment, trying to find out where it is, because they're not sure if it's like like a database somewhere just like leaking all these things out, or if it's hopping from media to media and corrupting it. However, like I said, the agency isn't entirely good. If you remember, they were seeking information about Candle Cove anonymously online, and if you remember, Wyatt had said he had gotten Smile Dog from, sent to him anonymously. So what I'm thinking is the agency might have sent Wyatt Smile Dog to try to test the creature to see, if they can try to figure out its motive, its patterns, if like it can just latch on to random things. And I think that was like a mass spread out thing. It was a spam mail like how Smile Dog originally is, and why it just so happened to be the one that was unfortunate and have the creature latch on to him. That might be a reach, I might be completely off, but hey, I mean, that it would follow with me, except the fact we know that they go online anonymously to try to gather source from everyday people. As for the creature itself, obviously it is a macabre, and the source point for all the lost and cursed media creepypastas that were so popular back in the day, which is why it's so hard to capture, as if you look at the older media based on creepypastas, i.e. the ones before Squidward's suicide, that kind of made the mold for hyper-realistic blood and just characters acting weird, like all that. They're all erratic, it's all over the place, and they're just trying to pinpoint a pattern for the creature and how it acts. And that's, every instance is just so weirdly bizarre because it has no pattern. The other big player in the story is the Macabre Labs, the company that is creating the entities through some kind of means. It's more than just science, as we saw with Ben. They were the ones who trapped his soul, body, mental thing. They trapped him in the game. So I'm convinced that they have some kind of like scientific and dark science powers, and that's their means for creating these creatures. I also have reason to think that they're the shady company that sold Silas the footage we saw in the mouse. Why were they doing all this? Or if the Macabre is still around, I don't know, but hopefully time will tell and we can find out like what's going on here. I think based on the investigation of the abandoned facility, the Macabre is either no longer an organization and the agency is just trying to track down what's left of their creatures, or at least something happened and it made them go into hiding. And while every other instance, aside from the killer, are relatively recent incidents, recent as in the last 20 years, I do think the mouse was actually the first thing to happen in the timeline, happening sometime in the first half of the 20th century, with Macabre selling the footage, releasing the creature, and the agency trying to track it down since. It's been the longest investigation they've been having going on. And now we're going to try to start getting into the storyline. As we saw from the killer, which is the oldest report at number 5, it was the incident that kind of brought the creature to the agency's attention. As they were looking for Jeff after he had escaped, and they just kind of came across Wyatt and brought him in for questioning, as he killed Jeff probably sometime in the 80s, and after interrogating Wyatt, they found out more about what the whole the mouse was and everything like that. They begun their investigation. They realized that this creature is this evil entity controlling media, and that's when the investigation started. So, with most of these investigations are closed, and that is the reason why there's no investigation number for the Candle Cove, is because it's the most recent lead in the hunt, as they more than likely found people on a message board and began looking into it. Whereas every other episode in the series is an already concluded investigation. At least they have everything they need, and it's a cold case. They don't obviously they didn't get the creature yet. I do think there's a bit of a rough linear timeline. It's not 100% factual, but from when I was gathering watching the series, this is what it is. The first episode, at least linearly in the series, is actually part 2, The Mouse, taking place sometime in the 40s or 50s more than likely, and at the very least the 60s. The next part is The Killer, which, like I said, probably happened in the late 80s. The next episode in the entry, the next series linearly was Ben, which would have taken place at the very least post 2008-ish. I mean, if Oliver says that the game he played it as a child, Majora's Mask came out in 2000, I think. It makes sense that, all right, well, he's looking into it, or he got the game as an adult. We'll give it 10 years. I don't know, between 2008 and 2012, 14, somewhere like that. And afterwards, we have The Dog, which happened sometime. It may be during the same time or just before Oliver and Ben, or it may be afterwards. There's no real set timeline. And the most recent video, Candle Cove, is present and taking place during, the current timeline. It is like maybe a few weeks ago. Don't take that as factual. That's just kind of like what I was able to get from it. Overall, I think this is an incredibly well done series, and it brings new life and interest into these classic creepypastas from when the genre was just starting out and starting to take on momentum. And if you enjoyed my rambling about it, please go and subscribe to Stuffy Studios. Their channel is going to be linked below. Give them some support. I'd link all their social media too, but the dude's pretty reclusive about it. I couldn't find any, at least. Because, this is just a really interesting series, and I want to see where it goes. Because, Scruffy is bringing back interest in these creepypastas and reminding everyone, hey, remember, this was supposed to be, scary stories. Which, these are kind of creepy. They're pretty scary. They're well edited, and they bring back that fear and kind of that linking them together, which is something that, fans of the genre have always tried to do, and I think Stuffy has done it the best so far, if not the best, and he's one of the best at doing it. But overall, from what I've seen, this dude's got talent for making this kind of content. So go show some support, subscribe, and if you like the video, hey, leave a like, subscribe if you want. I know I've been disappeared for a while. Life's busy. I moved, so I was dealing with all of that. Tell me what you thought. Leave some comments. Unfortunately, some of you may have noticed that I've been using music from a band called Ritz Vanity in the outros. It's my buddy Sam's band. They actually got copyright claimed on the last video from his whatever company he uses to help promote his music. So his music's not going to be in the outros anymore, but it will still be linked if you're curious about them. They make some pretty good music. They're in the Southern California area, so if you're out there, hey, go see them live. They're doing small shows. Would strongly recommend it. I have been Toast. You have been you. Have a good day. I love you. Bye-bye.